This is Radio 84 MHz, broadcasting from the bustling streets and hidden alleys of Vietnam. You are tuning into the frequency of authentic stories and unfiltered vibe.
This is Radio 84 MHz, broadcasting from the bustling streets and hidden alleys of Vietnam. You are tuning in to the frequency of inspirational stories and unfiltered vibes. Today, we follow Mark, a Wall Street shark who arrived in Thanh Nguyen convinced that the only value in Vietnamese coffee is its low price. A dismissed contract and a moment of arrogance would set the stage for the greatest investment reversal of his career. Presenting Vietnamese Coffee, the quiet giant's cheap Robusta mistake. Don't forget to subscribe for more hidden gems. And tell us below, what is the most underrated coffee origin in the world? Now, let's listen. I stared out the window of the rented SUV, the anti-glare glass coated with red basalt dust. All around, endless rows of green coffee plants stretched across the highlands. It felt like I was looking at a raw fuel manufacturing plant, not a farm. Son, are you sure this is the area we should be spending time on? I asked, adjusting the collar of my linen shirt. The finest material, but it still couldn't stop the dreadful humidity. Son, my local representative, nodded, slightly bowing. Mr. Mark, this is the country's largest Robusta producing region. Vietnam is second in the world for output, as you know. Our parent company needs a stable, cheap supply. Exactly, cheap, I repeated, emphasizing the word. In my eyes, Vietnamese coffee was only about quantity. It was a commodity, a financial instrument used for hedging on the futures market in London. It was not a product with soul or brand equity. If I wanted something with soul, I'd fly to Colombia or Ethiopia, where people willingly pay $80 for a bag of specialty Arabica. But here, this was the foundation for instant coffee and low-grade blends. My goal isn't to grow coffee, Son. My goal is to control the supply chain, lower the cost base, and squeeze out the competition from the commodity market. We stopped at the gate of a fairly modern processing facility. The company name was Vietnamese. I had prepared a massive, 5-year bulk purchase contract with a price 5% lower than the current market rate. A lightning strike, designed to crush any negotiation. As I entered the meeting room, I saw Mrs. Mai's face. She was the CEO of Vietnamese. A woman in her 50s, hair neatly pinned up, with sharp, but unafraid, eyes. Nice to finally meet you, Mark. I've read your proposal. Her voice was calm, a stark contrast to my overwhelming self-confidence. I smiled, the smile I usually reserved for closing deals on Wall Street. No need for much formality, Mrs. Mai. Let's get straight to the point. We are offering the best price you can get for this volume. A commitment to buy 50,000 tons of Robusta annually. Our terms are clear. You supply the raw material to the technical specification, and we handle the rest. Processing, packaging, branding, and sales. I pulled out a Mont Blanc pen. Just sign here, and you'll secure stable cash flow for half a decade. Mrs. Mai didn't touch the pen. She poured me a cup of coffee, black, dark, and thick. Mr. Mark, have you ever wondered how this coffee is made? I don't pay for stories, Mrs. Mai. I pay for moisture content and caffeine levels, I replied arrogantly. Mrs. Mai's gaze chilled slightly. Vietnamese coffee built its global empire on quality and perseverance, not pity. You see us as a poor country in need of cash, don't you? I leaned back in my chair. My core prejudice surged. With all due respect, Mrs. Mai. The truth is, Vietnam is doing one thing very well. Being the world's raw material supplier, Robusta. When do you see a premium Vietnamese coffee brand sitting next to Starbucks or Illy in New York? You don't. Because the brand and the added value are created in the West. We have the roasting technology. We have the retail chains. We have the marketing. All you have is the land and the inexpensive farmers. I added, my tone cold. Mrs. Mai, Vietnamese coffee is just a byproduct, a tool, never the main character in this industry. This was the breaking point. Mrs. Mai quietly pushed the contract back toward me. "We apologize, Mr. Mark. We decline your offer." I was completely shocked. "Decline? What are you talking about? This is an opportunity for your company to scale. Your proposal does not include terms for environmental sustainability and community support, sir. You only care about the price of Robusta on the futures market. While we care about the future of this land, we are not selling raw material in the way you think. We are selling a vision for quality and sustainable development." She stood up. "Vinabeen is not looking for a deal to become a cheap foot soldier for anyone. We are building a Vietnamese brand capable of competing with your giants. You were mistaken to undervalue our capabilities. We don't just grow coffee. We are controlling the future of Robusta coffee globally." I left in a fit of anger, feeling humiliated. Son rushed to follow me. "Mr. Mark, she's just a small businesswoman. She'll regret it. We'll find another supplier." I stopped, staring at the green coffee rows along the road. My anger quickly turned into confusion. That woman rejected a multi-million-dollar deal just for sustainability and vision? It was completely illogical according to the Wall Street mindset. "No, son," I muttered. "I don't get it. She's not playing by the rules, I know. Cheap Robusta coffee isn't worth someone taking such a risk. She's hiding something. I need to find out." That single sentence didn't just end the meeting. It concluded my Phase 1. I came here to buy a commodity, but I encountered a vision that I hadn't seen in any analyst report. My arrogance was crushed, but my curiosity was ignited. The night chill in the Highlands was unlike the day's heat. It was penetrating and sharp, reminding me of the dry, brittle cold of New York. But here, it carried the gentle scent of red earth and roasted coffee. I was stuck. The SUV Son rented was deeply embedded in a large mud puddle on the dirt road following an unexpected afternoon downpour. Son and I had tried to push it for over an hour, but it was useless. The area was too remote, and the phone signal was patchy. "I told you, Son, why are we wasting time in such a logistically backward place?" I snapped. I wasn't irritated just by the mud. I was frustrated because I had to stay near Vinabeen, near the woman who dared to reject me. I was searching for the economic reason behind Mrs. Mai's refusal. There had to be a secret, a new technology, a government grant I didn't know about. "My apologies, Mr. Mark," Son stammered. "I'll call for a tow truck as soon as I get a signal." About an hour later, after the sun had completely set, an old, flickering flashlight appeared. It was an older man, thin, wearing a conical hat, non-la, walking barefoot on the cold ground. "Having some trouble, gentlemen?" His voice was deep and warm. Son explained the situation. The man said nothing. He simply picked up his old phone and dialed a few numbers with a shaky hand. 5 minutes later, an engine roared. 3 young men appeared with a small tractor. They didn't ask questions or demand money. They simply attached a cable to my car and professionally pulled it out of the mud. When the car was free, I pulled out my wallet. "Thank you very much. This is for your work." I offered them a 500,000 VND note, a substantial amount in this region. The young man driving the tractor smiled kindly and pushed my hand back. "No need, sir. It's a small thing. Just be more careful next time." I froze. No payment needed? In my world, kindness always came with an invoice, especially after hard physical labor. The older man invited us to stay at his home for the night. His house was part of the very cooperative, HTX, I had dismissed. It turned out he was Ong Tu, Mr. Tu, Mrs. Mai's father, the founder and head of production. The next morning, when I woke up, the irresistible aroma of rich coffee permeated the air. Ong Tu was overseeing the processing, not in a cold steel factory as I had imagined, but in an open, clean space where everything was done meticulously by hand. I approached a long table. Dozens of women were carefully sorting individual coffee beans. This was not the place producing mass commodity. This was a lab. "Good morning, Ong Tu," I said, my tone softened. "I've never seen such rigorous quality control for Robusta coffee." Ong Tu looked at me with knowing eyes. Mr. Mark, you see, Robusta coffee is not always cheap or low quality. It's about how you treat it. We call this specialty Robusta. Every single one of these beans is hand-picked only when perfectly ripe. Then we use a strict temperature-controlled fermentation method to process it. This work costs 10 times more than machine stripping, but it yields flavor notes of chocolate, nuts, and even fruit. Flavors, your experts say, are impossible in Robusta, Ong Tu slowly explained. His enthusiasm and pride in every step of the process hit hard at my prejudice. In my mind, farmers were passive laborers who merely followed orders, but these people were artisans and unofficial scientists. They were innovating Vietnamese Robusta coffee, elevating it to a new standard. Just then, an expensive pickup truck pulled up. A white man in a sharp suit stepped out. It was Jean-Pierre, the head of procurement for a massive European coffee conglomerate, a direct competitor to my firm. Jean-Pierre recognized me, and his face registered clear astonishment. I knew he was tracking the same batch of specialty Robusta Ong Tu was preparing. Ong Tu, Jean-Pierre said, with his usual arrogant tone. I've returned. That 1-ton batch of high-quality Robusta. I can offer 25% more than Mrs. Mai's previous proposal. That price was phenomenal, even for the highest grade Robusta. If Vina Bean accepted, they would make a huge profit. Ong Tu did not move. Jean-Pierre, we already talked. Price is not the issue. Not the issue? Are you kidding me? This is your chance to maximize profit. Jean-Pierre scoffed, glancing at me as if to boast. That's the rule of business, old man. Profit maximization. What is your reason? Ong Tu took a deep breath, pointing to the fertile soil around them, where coffee trees were intercropped with fruit trees for shade and moisture retention. My reason is here. In your new proposal, you require us to double our output within 3 years, and revert to using the chemical fertilizers and pesticides we eliminated. You want us to sacrifice soil quality for short-term profit. Ong Tu looked straight at Jean-Pierre, and then at me. His eyes held a mix of firmness and sadness. Mr. Jean-Pierre, Mr. Mark, do you see these coffee trees? They are planted to sustain not just my family, but this entire community, for generations. If we accept your money, we might be rich today, but in 10 years, the land will die, the water source will dry up. Will your money buy us a future then? Ong Tu refused a massive profit to protect natural resources and community sustainability. In that moment, I felt an electric shock run down my spine. It struck right at the core of my belief: money is king. I realized the truth behind Mrs. Mai's rejection. It wasn't a negotiating tactic, nor a larger secret payment. It was a deeply held cultural principle passed down through generations. They were willing to sacrifice personal and short-term profit to ensure the long-term survival and quality of their community. Jean-Pierre, red-faced, stormed off in frustration. As for me, I stood there, my hands trembling, looking at this Vietnamese farmer who had rejected an amount of money that I, a Wall Street investor, would never, ever refuse. I came here looking for a financial secret. I found a human and philosophical secret about how to live and work. I turned to Sun, who was also speechless. Son, I whispered, we were completely wrong. This is not about cheap Robusta coffee. This is about a global value chain controlled by people with a longer-term vision than any investor on Wall Street. The arrogance from Phase 1 vanished. It was replaced by a chilling respect and fear. I didn't just underestimate their coffee. I underestimated their people and their character. I couldn't leave. I told Son we would wait for the tow truck until noon. But that was just an excuse. The truth was, I needed more information. I, Mark, a shark investor from Wall Street, had been defeated by an old farmer using a concept called sustainability and the future of the land. It made me feel foolish. My analytical mind refused to accept the truth. There must be an economic advantage that allowed them to reject the money. Son, fortunately, found an old notebook in our muddy car. It was a summary of regional coffee market analysis he had prepared earlier. I started flipping through the pages. Vietnam, the world's largest Robusta exporter, leads the market by price and volume. The specialty market is dominated by Arabica from Colombia, Ethiopia. Vietnamese Robusta is rated by Western markets as having a rubbery flavor. My old prejudice, confirmed by every report. But then, I stumbled upon a page with Sohn's handwritten note. Need to monitor. Vina Bean and several Tanguine cooperatives are experimenting with a proprietary cold enzyme fermentation protocol. Goal: to break the traditional Robusta flavor profile. This is a community-funded R&D project. Details are highly confidential. Keyword: cold enzyme fermentation, R&D protocol, Vietnamese Robusta innovation. That was what I needed. The secret document. Not philosophy, not kindness, but technology. I knew I was doing something ethically wrong, but I had to find this truth. I sneaked out of Ong Tu's house around 3 a.m., using my phone light to navigate to the warehouse where I'd seen them processing coffee during the day. The lights were still on. Mrs. Mai was there, not doing paperwork, but wearing a lab coat and observing a row of machines that looked more like medical equipment than coffee processing gear. I hid behind a stack of coffee bags and watched. Mrs. Mai was on a video call with someone who looked like a scientist. The person wasn't speaking English or Vietnamese, but a technical language full of biochemical terms. Has the pectinase enzyme ratio been standardized? Mrs. Mai asked. Exactly. We've seen the breakdown of the mucilage sheath 30% more effectively than with natural fermentation. This significantly reduces the astringent compounds often found in Robusta. Mrs. Mai nodded, walking over to a large, stainless steel tank-like device, encased in a complex cooling system. Temperature control system. I recognized it. This was the key point. We must maintain a stable temperature at 10 degrees Celsius for 72 hours. Mrs. Mai explained to the other person. This uses a large amount of renewable energy from the solar power system our cooperative installed. However, it allows the hydrolysis process to occur slowly and controlled, creating complex amino acid and sugar chains. This is the weapon that transforms our Robusta from a low-grade commodity into a flavor complex. Keyword: hydrolysis process, complex flavor compounds, specialty Robusta science. In that moment, my world collapsed for the second time in 24 hours. I had always thought Vietnamese coffee was merely a product of climate and cheap labor. But in reality, they were using advanced biotechnology to create a new product category. This wasn't copying. This was strategic and proactive innovation. I pulled out my phone, secretly taking a few photos of the equipment and trying to remember the technical terms. Back at the house, I immediately sent an encrypted email to my investment fund's R&D team in New York. Subject: urgent analysis, Robusta enzyme fermentation protocol. Body: I have witnessed evidence of a novel post-harvest processing technique for Robusta. Focusing on cold temperature control, 10C, and controlled enzyme use. Immediately investigate whether this can change the Robusta flavor profile, specifically eliminating the rubbery taste and increasing the complexity of organic acids. Report back to me immediately. 15 minutes later, the answer from my R&D team arrived, brief and terrifying. Mark, we've been looking into this. Top coffee scientists have written internal reports on the potential of this technology. They call it Beyond Arabica. It allows Robusta, which is hardier and easier to grow under climate change conditions, to achieve Arabica's sensory quality. This could invert the entire $100 billion global coffee market. Keyword: Beyond Arabica. Climate change resilience. $100 billion USD coffee market. I slumped down. The feeling was no longer confusion or anger. It was overwhelm and deep remorse. I realized my mistake wasn't just undervaluing their coffee, but undervaluing their strategic intellect. Mrs. Mai and Ong Tu didn't reject Jean-Pierre's money and mind solely on ethics. They rejected it because they knew that the true value of their product was far higher than any price either of us could offer. If this technology is commercialized widely, Vietnamese Robusta will no longer be a secondary commodity. It will become the main player, potentially replacing Arabica in many markets. Vietnam would control not just the volume but the future quality of global coffee. I came here to buy a few tons of commodity. I accidentally discovered a global value chain transformation strategy. I looked out the window as the sunlight began to shine. The green coffee rows were no longer raw fuel manufacturing plants. They were sophisticated biolabs, farmed by people with a longer-term vision than anyone I had ever met in New York. They are not passive growers, Son, I told myself, muttering. They are the architects of coffee's future. It's not. I lost a sales contract, but I found a revolutionary investment opportunity. Regret is an emotion I rarely experience. On Wall Street, every mistake is a financial failure, not a personal one. But what I witnessed in Tai Nguyen, the combination of Ong Tu's sustainable philosophy and Mrs. Mai's technological innovation, made me realize I was wrong not just about a deal but about my entire worldview. I flew urgently to Hanoi, carrying a suitcase full of data, photos of the cold fermentation system, notes on enzymes, and most importantly, my R&D team's urgent report on Beyond Arabica. The first thing I did was call Mrs. Mai. Mrs. Mai. It's Mark. I'm in Hanoi. Can I meet you right now? My voice lacked the usual arrogance, replaced only by urgency. Mrs. Mai agreed, but not in a luxurious conference room, but a traditional cafe in the old quarter. I waited, feeling more nervous than facing a federal auditor. When Mrs. Mai arrived, I stood up. This was the first time I had done that for a business partner after being rejected. Mrs. Mai, please accept my apology for wasting your time. I took a deep breath. I want to be direct. I was wrong. Completely, fundamentally wrong. Mrs. Mai sat down, her expression calm, as if she had anticipated this. What were you wrong about, Mark? I was wrong to view Vietnamese coffee as merely a low-grade commodity. I was wrong to view farmers like Ong Tu as passive laborers lacking vision. And I was wrong to believe that value is only created in Western financial centers. I placed my phone on the table, opening the R&D report. I saw your cooperative's cold fermentation process. My team calls it Beyond Arabica. I understand the implications. Vietnamese Robusta, with its superior climate resilience, is about to achieve Arabica's sensory quality. You and your father are not just growing coffee. You are reshaping the future of the entire global coffee industry. I looked her straight in the eyes. The confession had to be strong and genuine. I came here to be a predator, trying to buy raw material cheaply to squeeze the supply chain. Now, I realize I was standing before a quiet giant, a competitor we must learn from and partner with. Keyword: global supply chain, investment reversal, Vietnamese competitor. Mrs. Mai smiled slightly. Our honor does not come from your apology, Mark. It comes from the fact that our land remains healthy. So, what is your intention now? I must make a personal and business conversion. Right now, my fund is in the final stages of injecting $130 million into Jean-Pierre's European coffee conglomerate, aiming to control the raw Robusta supply chain. I am going to cancel that deal. Mrs. Mai raised an eyebrow. That was a huge number, an action nearly suicidal in my investment world. Instead, I continued, my voice firm, I want to propose a $50 million investment into Vina Bean and your partner cooperatives, not to buy raw materials, but to build the brand, scale the cold fermentation technology, and establish a direct specialty Robusta coffee distribution chain into the North American and European markets. This was my act of conversion. I shifted from wanting to buy a commodity to wanting to buy a vision and technology. The emergency virtual meeting with my investment board took place 3 hours later. I sat in the hotel room, my shirt soaked in sweat. Mark, what are you saying? Cancel the Jean-Pierre deal? $130 million is committed. Are you joking? David, the fund chairman, barked through the speaker. I am completely serious, David. That deal is based on a dead business model. It assumes Robusta is a cheap commodity. I presented Mrs. Mai's data. I projected the images of the cold fermentation technology and the Beyond Arabica report onto the screen. Gentlemen, we are in the middle of a coffee industrial revolution. Vietnamese scientists are eliminating Robusta's core weakness, the flavor, while retaining its core strength, climate resilience, and high yield. I slammed my hand on the table. The dramatic confession. I confess, I miserably underestimated Vietnam. We always viewed Vietnam as a place to outsource labor, to buy cheap. But they are not suppliers. They are innovators who can become our fiercest competitors. We cannot fight them by buying cheap. We must partner with them to control the future. Keyword: investment, confession, strategic innovation, market competitor. I proposed reallocating $50 million to Vina Bean. This is not just an investment. This is a strategic strike to secure our future position. If we don't support them in developing the specialty Robusta brand, another Chinese or European conglomerate will do it. And when that happens, we lose everything. Silence stretched for a minute. Then Emily, the risk analysis director, who was often my rival, spoke up. Mark, I've reviewed the R&D report. This data is highly credible. If what you're saying is true, then maintaining the Jean-Pierre deal is a catastrophic risk. David finally nodded, grudgingly. All right, Mark. We will approve the cancellation of the $130 million deal. But you must prove that the $50 million into Vietnam will yield superior returns. You will personally head this joint venture. I smiled. My career was saved, but more importantly, my psyche was converted. I returned to Mrs. Mai. Mrs. Mai, my fund has agreed. We will work together. But there's one condition. I want to work directly with Ong Tu. I want to learn that long-term vision. Mrs. Mai extended her hand, her smile truly warm this time. Welcome, Mark. We are happy to have a partner and not just a buyer. I didn't just change my business plan. I changed myself from a Wall Street shark who only saw short-term value. I became a man who recognized the hidden power and long-term vision of the Vietnamese people. I was sitting on a small plastic chair by a Hanoi roadside, facing Hoan Kiem Lake, shimmering under the lights. In front of me was a cup of traditional Robusta coffee, black, thick, and intense. This time, I wasn't drinking it for the caffeine or to analyze its moisture content. I was drinking it to understand its soul. It had been 3 months since I signed the partnership agreement with Vina Bean. I had cancelled the $130 million European deal, and my board was still frowning. But they had seen the initial reports on the potential of Vietnamese specialty Robusta. Keyword: specialty Robusta, investment return, Vietnamese coffee culture. For the past 3 months, I hadn't been a Wall Street investor trading on paper. I had become a student of Ong Tu. I learned that their concept of value was fundamentally different from mine. In New York, we measure value by the speed of return, by short-term transactions, by asset stripping and profit maximization. We call that transaction. In Thanh Nguyen, they measure value by the health of the soil, by the ability of future generations to still farm that land, by the sustainability of the community. They call that legacy or long-term vision. In my final conversation with Ong Tu before he fully handed over the operations to Mrs. Mai, he said something that stayed with me. Mr. Mark, this coffee plant, like our people, doesn't need flashiness. Robusta doesn't have the elegant acidity of Arabica. It is bitter, it is strong, it is resilient. It doesn't die in harsh weather. We choose to grow it, not because it's cheap, but because it is reliable. Ong Tu smiled, his eyes creased with the lines of time. You Westerners, you come here and think we are just an easily exploitable source of raw material. You see the tree, and you see the price. We see the land, and we see the generation. he added, his voice philosophical. True power lies not in the ability to control the market immediately, but in the ability to survive and thrive through instability. Keyword: long-term vision, cultural strength, robusta resilience. Ung Tu's words crystallized my entire psychological conversion. I realized that Vietnam is not a backward country trying to catch up with the West in their game. They are defining a new game with their own rules. The quiet innovation. The cold enzyme fermentation technology was not a random invention. It was the product of a resilient and creative mindset within constraints. Instead of complaining that the market undervalued Robusta, they used science to change its very nature. They didn't just change the flavor. They changed the definition of the coffee industry. That is geopolitical strategy applied to a coffee bean. Sustainable power. Rejecting $130 million was not foolishness, but a strategic defense against short-term exploitation. They prioritized protecting their land resources and community over immediate profit. In a world facing climate change, the resilience of Vietnamese Robusta, coupled with a sustainable supply chain, is an insurance policy that no investor can truly price. I took one last sip of the coffee. The bitterness spread, strong, followed by the subtle sweetness that the cold fermentation technology provided. It was the flavor of upgraded perseverance. I, Mark, came to Vietnam with the prejudice that I was the teacher to instruct them on business. I leave as a student who understood the most important lesson. True value is not what you buy cheapest, but what you build that money cannot buy. Resilience, community sustainability, and a vision that spans generations. This is not just a story about coffee. This is a story about Vietnam's hidden capacity. A capacity to persevere, innovate quietly, and refuse to be a foot soldier in any global supply chain. They are not suppliers, they are creators. I looked out at Hoan Kiem Lake, the coffee cup empty. My final declaration, not to David or Emily, but to myself: Vietnam is not a market. Vietnam is a lesson in vision. And that lesson, in the long run, is worth far more than $130 million. I found my biggest investment opportunity, not in a commodity, but in the resilient spirit and innovative intellect of a nation.